Cynthia Coffman announced Thursday she'll be joining the already crowded, and we talked about this like last week, being already crowded, Republican primary race for governor. Meanwhile, maybe making it a little less crowded, the Denver Post reports fellow GOP gubernatorial candidate George Brockler may switch to the race for attorney general. David, we've been trying to figure out if Cynthia Coffman, she was the last really big decision that we needed of what was going to happen for the big governor's race. Now that she's in, how does that affect the slate, especially when you have Tom Tancredo making the big splash last week?
Well, it's wide open, I think. And of course, the conventional wisdom is that Tom, who has a solid base, and maybe also a ceiling of somewhere between 25 and 30%, could, in the right circumstances against a divided field, that could be enough to come in for first place. But we'll see. I think there'll be a convention and petitions and fundraising, and that'll lead to a lot of consolidation. So Tom may have many fewer opponents by the time people are voting in the primary. Probably a smart move for Brockler. He had a sort of really good lead in terms of endorsements and being out there and being well known, but was having trouble raising funds. And you know, if the goal is to get into statewide office, he's got a better chance in a situation where he has a real strong chance of being the Republican nominee. But for everybody, for any Republican running next year, I think it's like trying to surf on a tidal wave. You'll find some very skilled people who can stay on top and survive, and they're true champions. But anybody who's one step below that may just get swept under. What we saw in Virginia and nationally is the Republicans were able to get out their vote and actually improved on their vote totals compared to comparable races in previous cycles. Ed Gillespie, the Republican candidate for governor of Virginia, won among independents. But the race was not close, and Virginia Democrats did very well, making huge gains in the lower house of the legislature that nobody had expected, because Democratic turnout, particularly in the northern Virginia suburbs, was so incredibly high. We can now say that Hillary Clinton greatly depressed Democratic turnout in the last election, and now that she's not around anymore, mostly, thanks be to God, it's really, you take that millstone off of Democratic turnout, and at the same time, Trump, who annoys people a lot anyway, now being president instead of a candidate, is more omnipresent and then all the more annoying to the kind of people he annoys. And he hasn't done a very good job about moderating his rhetoric or, acting like a 16-year-old rather than a petulant 9-year-old in a lot of his tweeting. So that, of course, incites Democratic turnout. And that's what it was, is the Democrats won not because Republicans changed their mind or independents came over to them, but because they got their vote out in a huge way, same as Obama did in 2012.
Mm-hmm. Joey, so of the people who are in the Republican primary right now for governor that are, I would say, the big names, and no offense to some of the folks that are on the 8-person ballot, but we know there's some big names probably going to be there at the end. Does Cynthia Coffman arrive as the anti-Tancredo moderate, so that if you don't want to go really right as a Republican primary voter and you want a moderate Republican, is she that answer, or is it somebody else?
No, it's Walker Stapleton's that answer. I think that Cynthia is not as far to the right as Tom Tancredo, but she's probably about 3/4 of the way there. In the morning she announced, somebody tweeted out a picture, a GIF of her, am I pronouncing that right? I don't know. I'm not cool like Patty.
It depends which side of I-25, it's GIF or GIF. It really doesn't matter.
Well, she's shouting "Go Trump" on there. And you remember Tom Tancredo and Cynthia Coffman were the two of the three that tried to force Steve House out as the Republican Party chairman over allegedly over blackmailing him over a sex scandal, and it didn't work. So she and Tancredo are running buddies. They'll divide that conservative vote. How many of those votes she can take away from Tancredo will be good for Walker Stapleton. But I may be on the outsides at this table, but I believe that we're going to get to the primary with 4 or 5 Republicans on the ballot. I think Tom's going to be there. I think Walker Stapleton is going to be there. Maybe Cynthia. Victor Mitchell's got $3 million and he's building momentum, and Victor Mitchell's a candidate to keep your eye on, and we could see Doug Robinson there. That's 4 people who have to beat 1 person. So the real winners again, on Tuesday the Democrats and the liberals across this state won, and on Wednesday when Cynthia Coffman got in this race, they won because they help Tom Tancredo get across that finish line if unless she takes a lot of votes from him. And if Tom Tancredo is the nominee for the Republicans, Democrats have a lot easier time, because let's remember the reason he got in this race was because of the alt-right and because a convention that he was supposed to speak at in Colorado Springs, put on by the people who were affiliated with the people who put on Charlottesville, Virginia on that protest. He's going to be linked to all that. And Tom Tancredo, you don't have to look far to put together an opposition ad and against Tom. So it's another good day for Democrats.
It's not a deep Google search. Ben, what is, I guess, who has the best news right now, the best chances? Cynthia Coffman entering the GOP gubernatorial primary, or George Brockler contemplating the Attorney General GOP primary?
I think George, hands down. He ought to get out of the governor's race, and it looks pretty clearly like he's going to. He's getting squeezed out. I couldn't agree more with Joey's analysis. I think Democrats across the state are going go, Tom, go. I think probably the only better scenario for Democrats sees anybody else win the Republican primary and Tancredo decide to run as an independent again. Then you're pretty much minting whomever the Democratic nominee is. So certainly I think George is going to exit and probably get the nominee for Attorney General. I know that there's conversation with him and a state rep who's considering it, and I think he'll be able to back that person out. And I think the clown car is good news for Dems.
Patty, who's happier right now at Cynthia Coffman jumping in the race, Tom Tancredo or Walker Stapleton?
I would say it's Walker Stapleton, but we have to remember when you have so many clowns in this car, what we're going to get coming out of the car is going to be a clown. So at the primary, we're going to be looking at an extraordinary number of people on the ballot, even at 4 or 5, but you're also going to have the possibility of unaffiliated voters going in and voting in this primary too, who could swing it in a number of ways. Will people be so cynical as to say, let's vote for the person who is going to torpedo the Republican Party, or is it going to be just whoever happens to strike their fancy? Tancredo got 36% of the vote running as an independent, or not as a third-party candidate, and I wouldn't put it past him to do it again. So Democrats right now are going to have to play a waiting game just to keep doing everything they can for their own candidacy, but it's so up in the air which Republican could win, and then will there only be the 2 parties represented?